So I've made it here to Konya, and I'm kind of stuck because I turned my laundry in for them to wash yesterday morning. It's not back yet, so I can't really go out and do anything for two reasons. One, it's cold out there right now. Cold front came through with rain, and I'm not interested in walking around in shorts everywhere. Two, can't go into mosques and whatnot in shorts even if they cover the knees. So I'm just kind of stuck here until the laundry comes in, which will hopefully be soon. Update, my laundry was done. It was just waiting downstairs. They just didn't tell me it was back in their office spot. So now it's time to go out and explore Konya, but first, let's get to the intro. My name's Jack Rogers. In June of 2023, I decided I'd had it with normal life and set out to travel the world. 2 years later, I'm still going. I've seen some cool things in my time. I've swam the Nile, followed a matador around Spain, dived the world's oceans, and even returned to Iraq after 5 years away. Now I'm off on my next expedition, an 18-month trek through some of the world's most fascinating pilgrimages. My journey will take me to 12 countries as I walk in the shoes of religious pilgrims, ancient traders, and soldiers who blazed these trails centuries ago. This isn't just another trip. Unlike my first journey, I won't be walking the earth aimlessly. This is a chance to walk with purpose, to trace the footsteps of those who move for faith and survival. These routes carry stories, and I intend to find mine among them. I've never attempted anything like this before, but after 2 years of discovering what this world has to offer, I'm ready to take the plunge into some of life's deeper meaning. I'll be tested, physically and mentally, but I know in the end, it will all be worth it as I become a wayfarer. So I said this when I got to Istanbul during the Great Gallivanting, which has been, coming up on 2 years ago almost. And it's weird coming to a place that's so modern after having been in places that aren't. I mean, like, several cities have a very modern city center, but then once you get a street or two out, it's not. This is not the case. Konya is very, very Western. It kind of looks old, but it definitely reminds me a lot more of Europe and Istanbul than, say, Mardin or Sivas or Şanlıurfa. And that includes coffee shops. Now, normally I'm against going to Western coffee shops, but I'm not a big fan of Turkish coffee, so I decided to stop in and get something before heading out on my adventure through the city. Naturally, my first stop was the main mosque in town, the Sultan Selim Camii. Built in the 1500s under Sultan Selim II, it represents a period when Konya shifted from being the spiritual center of the Seljuks to a key Ottoman provincial city. The mosque was constructed directly across from the Mevlana complex, which I went to second, and that location wasn't accidental. It signaled the Ottomans' intention to honor Konya's Sufi heritage while firmly integrating the city into the imperial religious system. Architecturally, it follows the classical Ottoman style, shaped by Mimar Sinan's era, a single large dome supported by semi-domes, a broad interior designed for clear visibility of the mihrab, and a layout emphasizing unity and communal prayer. Its religious significance comes from how it functioned in relation to the Mevlevi order. While the dervishes carried out their rituals next door, Sultan Selim Camii served as the formal Friday mosque where Konya's Muslim population gathered for khutbahs aligned with the central Ottoman state. In that sense, it acted as a bridge between local devotional traditions and a standardized Sunni practice promoted throughout the empire. Over the centuries, it has remained active, continuing to host regular prayers and maintaining its role as one of Konya's main congregational mosques. Despite later restorations, its core structure and purpose remain close to what they were when it was completed. Interesting point of fact, I have the English version of one of those Qurans, is what Omar gave me. But true Islam believes that the words in the Quran are not just transcribed words like the Christian Bible believes with Paul's letters and the Gospels and whatnot. They believe they are the actual words of God, which means that God spoke them to Muhammad in Arabic. So across the world, Muslims read the Quran in Arabic whether they understand it or not. That's why the call to prayer is almost always in Arabic. It's very not common to find non-Arabic Qurans across the world. However, here in Turkey, it is a secular country, but all religious, by religious they mean Islamic, services and everything are run by the state, which means that the state controls it, not the clerics and not the imams and not someone other religious person, they may have pledged allegiance to or have influence over them, which means that the state can publish, and those are sanctioned, published by the state, publish the Quran in different languages. Now, I'm not sure what the thought on that is in the rest of the world. You know, Omar, I'm talking to him, he said, oh, this is just a book. What matters are the messages and the words in the book. The book itself doesn't matter as long as you understand. And that is a very modernist view of Islam. But I will be interested to see when I move to Iraq and Morocco what the thoughts are on it there, because those countries actually speak Arabic, and it's illegal to proselytize in Morocco, that is to preach Christianity. So it does make me wonder what that confluence or conflict is going to be when I get there. With all of that in mind, I headed next door to the Mevlevi complex, a central hub for Konya's Sufi tradition. The site grew around the tomb of Jalaluddin Rumi, who died here in 1273, and it quickly became the institutional heart of the Mevlevi order. The early structures were Seljuk, but the complex expanded significantly under the Ottomans, who supported the order and formalized its role in religious and cultural life. Over time, it developed into a full tekke, a lodge that included living quarters for dervishes, training halls, kitchens, and spaces for instruction in Quranic recitation, Sufi doctrine, poetry, and music. At the center of it all is the Green Dome, built in the 16th century to replace earlier structures surrounding Rumi's tomb. For followers of the Mevlevi path, this became a site of ziyareti, not in the sense of seeking intercession, but as a way of reflecting on Rumi's teachings about humility, discipline, and the love of Allah. The surrounding halls served more practical purposes. This was where novices learned the structured spiritual training that defined the order, strict adherence to Islamic law, extended periods of study, and the gradual progression towards the Sema ceremony, the whirling ritual that symbolized turning away from the ego and toward divine truth. The Semahan, the main hall where the ritual took place, was designed intentionally for clarity and symmetry, allowing the dervishes to perform in controlled discipline formation. Rather than being a public spectacle, it functioned historically as a carefully regulated act of worship. The Ottomans recognized its cultural and spiritual value, and the Mevlevis became known for producing scholars, musicians, and administrators who served throughout the empire. Even today, the complex maintains its religious character. Visitors come to see Rumi's tomb, but they also move through the rooms that show how the order lived, trained, and taught. It remains one of the most important sites for understanding both Konya's identity and the broader development of Sufi practice in Anatolia. I can safely say that I have never walked into a mosque with my shoes on, even with shoe covers before. That was absolutely bizarre. So if you're ever in Konya and you come to visit this museum, everything is in Turkish, but don't let that discourage you. If you have the patience just to walk around and look on the backside, they do have it in English. Sometimes that means you got to go on the other side of something to read it, but it is available to read. After visiting the Mevlevi complex, I decided to go look through one of the bazaars. Personally, I love the souks in Morocco's, and the bazaars of Turkey are very similar. Granted, this one's been restored over the past many years to give it the same feel that it had when it first opened centuries ago. Tucked into the center of the bazaar was the Azizia Cami, an Ottoman mosque rebuilt in the 1800s after a major fire. Architecturally, it reflects the late Ottoman shift towards Baroque-influenced design, but its role was straightforward. It served the commercial heart of Konya. Merchants prayed here between work, and its location made it a steady focal point for daily religious life. Despite its ornate exterior, its significance lies in how it anchored the surrounding market, functioning as both a neighborhood mosque and a symbol of renewed imperial investment in the city during the Tanzimat era. It was at this mosque that I experienced one of the most disrespectful things that I had seen so far. A couple of Western tourists, both females, walked in the mosque to check it out, which wasn't a big deal, except that they walked in without their headscarves on. When someone told them to put them on, they did, then they took them off again to readjust them, a highly disrespectful practice in Islam. Personally, I don't like to participate in other faiths, but I will meet them halfway at basic respect, and this was a highly offensive gesture, even for someone like me, who was a Westerner, but understood the cultural practices. That said, I had to remember something important, that Turkey in the 1920s had killed off most of its Christian population, so I could understand if people didn't believe that mosques were entitled to the respect that they demanded from foreigners. But for a traveler, that wasn't a fight that I needed to have, nor was I interested in having it because I didn't speak the language and no one would understand or care about this American's perspective. So a concern that I've heard from a couple different people, Ahmet in Kayseri, Hussein down in Mardin, even some people out in Izmir, which you'll have to watch the Wayfarer Extra coming up for Izmir. But something I've heard of the concern of the current government and situation as Turkey is the rise of fundamentalists or extremists in religion, because Turkey does have state-run Islam. And I have to say, I don't necessarily think that is unfounded, not just politically, but socially. There are a lot of women out wearing not just hijab, right? Not just a head covering, but the full niqab and many variations thereon. A lot of them in all black. And, Turkey not decriminalized, but they took away the law saying that women couldn't wear head coverings in government positions. That was intended originally as a way to say we're going to be a secular government, but then the women's rights groups got involved and said no, it's for their religious choice. And now you see a lot. A lot. Okay, dude, that's annoying. And it does make me think that could be an under the surface bubbling part. I even see really young girls wearing it, which I know that's not necessarily their choice, it's on their parents, but still, it's on their parents. But again, that wasn't a fight that I could have here in country because I didn't speak the language and I was a foreigner who they would say didn't understand their cultural practices. It was just something I could take back home and explain to people who were curious about this part of the world or who valued my opinion, which probably wasn't many people anyway. With my philosophizing over, I made my way to the Karatai Madrasa, a 13th century Seljuk institution built under the patronage of Selahaddin Karatai. It was originally a center for higher learning, specifically theology and astronomy, reflecting on the Seljuk emphasis of combining religious scholarship with scientific study. The layout follows the classical Anatolian madrasa plan, a single courtyard structure with a large dome classroom and student cells arranged around it. Today, it operates as a museum focused on Seljuk ceramics and tile work, which makes sense given the building's own decoration. The interior dome is aligned with some of the best surviving examples of Seljuk turquoise and black mosaic titles, and the museum uses the space to show how these techniques developed across the 12th and 13th centuries. Many of the artifacts on display were excavated from nearby Seljuk palaces and workshops, so the collection effectively ties Konya's political history to its artistic output. Even without extensive interpretation panels, the building itself does most of the teaching. Its structure and ornamentation show how a Seljuk educational institution functioned and how the art of the period expressed both religious ideas and courtly aesthetics. After leaving the museum, I headed over to the Aladdin Hill Park, the city's metaphorical and literal center. This was the central point for buses and trams heading out into other parts of the city. It was also a place where families and friends gathered for pleasant days out. It was no surprise then that it was home to one of the most beautiful mosques in the city, the Aladdin Keykubat Cami. Built in the early 1200s under Sultan Aladdin Keykubat I, this mosque served as a primary congregational mosque for the Seljuk capital of Konya. It was constructed on the Citadel Hill, directly beside the remains of early Byzantine structures, which allowed the Seljuks to embed their rule physically and symbolically into the city's highest point. Like many early Anatolian Seljuk mosques, it's a hypostyle structure, broad, low, and supported by numerous reused columns taken from earlier Roman and Byzantine buildings. That reuse wasn't decorative. It was a practical way to build quickly while asserting continuity with the region's long architectural history. The mosque's most distinctive feature is its wooden roof system, supported by those mixed columns and capitals, creating a forest-like interior rather than a centralized dome space. This reflects the transitional period between fully domed Ottoman-style mosques became standard. Aladdin Keykubat also added a royal pavilion area inside, emphasizing the mosque's role not just as a religious center, but also as a space tied to Seljuk political authority. Over time, the building underwent several restorations, especially during the Ottoman period, but its core Seljuk identity remains intact. The mihrab, with its geometric tile work, shows how Konya blended Persian decorative traditions with local craftsmanship. Today, The mosque stands as one of the clearest surviving examples of early Anatolian Seljuk religious architecture, illustrating how the dynasty shaped Islamic worship spaces before the Ottoman era standardized a new architectural language.
Well, I had more planned for the rest of the day after visiting this mosque, but I feel like I've been in the field for about 4 days in the same tent with guys and girls that weren't as clean as they should be. I'm achy, I'm worn down, got no energy, and I don't have any orange beverage-based powder with 3 million % vitamin C to pick me up, so I'm gonna go back to the hotel and see you guys tomorrow. So welcome back to the land of the living. I feel a lot better than I did last night. I found a pharmacy and bought some vitamin C tablets. Probably had too many of those, but I do feel better. Just chillaxed. I mean, I was so fatigued. It was just taken out of me, so I'm glad I did that. And now I've got some other things I'm gonna go see. And apparently, this mosque that I showed you yesterday, right, want to kick this all off? Apparently it's got like a old library archives thing in it, so I'm gonna go see if I can check that out. So that was about it, to be honest with you. I mean, there's a couple guys working in there, like that's their office. They work at the archives, which is, that's pretty cool. If I spoke any Turkish, I probably could have spent a long time in there. But also, they have copies of the books for sale, which I actually kind of appreciate, because a lot of times you're like, I would love to have this old manuscript. You can't have the original, but maybe you can have a copy. So anyway, if you speak Turkish and you're into the historical and religious side, that's definitely a place to check out.
As I walked through this shopping district early in the morning, before heading off to anywhere else, I couldn't help but notice just how Western it had become. Across the street where my hotel was, there were plenty of local shops and local restaurants, but a lot of times the tourists and even locals deferred to these European and Western style ones. Don't get me wrong, they were nice and they were more expensive, but they just weren't authentically Turkish.
An issue that I've become acutely attuned to since entering Turkey this time around, and really experiencing in some parts of Spain too, and really in Mexico, which, not on the Wayfarer Expedition, but when I was writing the Great Gallivanting book, is the issue of gentrification and westernization of other places. And here in Turkey it's a big problem, and I don't mean that as capitalism is bad or Western values are bad. I believe quite the opposite, but there is a cultural element that is being lost in Turkey, and I've talked to a couple of Turkish men who have lamented this and said, you know, it's an economic problem more than anything else, because young men especially, but also young women, you know, they learn English so that they can have better opportunities, because otherwise, he said, one guy said, you know, otherwise their hope for a good life rests in Burger King. And it's not just Burger King, but you know, it's Western style coffee shops. Even if they're local, they're still Western, right? They're not serving, you know, Turkish coffee or Tibet coffee. They're serving white mochas and Americanos and things for tourists. And you know, there was a guy in Jordan, in Amman, Jordan, during the night I got scammed. If you read the book, that's a whole story. But even he was telling me, he's like, these coffee shops, too many coffee shops. It's, you know, this is not what it's like. It's not what our culture is about. And I have to kind of agree, you know, I don't mind areas like this one that are renovated and restored and giving local shops, you know, opportunities. But in the, you know, the market that's on the other side that I was just showing, that's just where the money is. And eventually you have to say, I got to make money. Because some of the places I go to eat that are paying 150, 200 Turkish lira for a meal, they're not making the money they need to sustain themselves, with the tourism market affecting just about everything.
With that happy thought in mind, I headed out to explore a few of the city's mosques. Granted, I had seen a few the day before, but there were just so many to see. Like this one, an unassuming brick structure that actually serves as the tomb of Sultan Siyavush. Not much is known about the tomb of the Sultan, and there's no inscription in the mosque to give any details, but archaeologists and historians say that the tomb dates back to around the time of 1280. But this mosque, the nearby Kapı Cami, is a different story, and it represents a different moment in Konya's history. Built in the mid-17th century and expanded in the 19th, it reflects a fully developed Ottoman mosque style rather than the earlier Seljuk approach seen on Aladdin Hill. It served as the main Friday mosque once the city's commercial center shifted outward from the old citadel, which explains its placement right at the heart of Konya's marketplace. That location wasn't incidental. Ottoman urban planning tied major mosques to active trade zones, anchoring religious life inside the rhythms of daily commerce. Its large central dome, supported by semi-domes, marks the architectural priorities of its era, a bright unified prayer hall rather than a forest of columns. The mosque also became a focal point for local religious and civic gatherings, especially during the late Ottoman reforms when Konya's urban fabric was reshaped. Though restored many times, Kapı still functions as a busy neighborhood mosque, showing how Ottoman religious foundations adapted to and shaped the evolving life of the city. Next up was the Şerafettin Cami, but it was unfortunately closed for renovations. It was built in the late 16th century, and it played a key role in Konya's Ottoman religious landscape, providing a dedicated space for daily prayers and Friday sermons. It also hosted educational sessions and Quranic instruction, serving as a center for formal practice and transmission of Sunni Islam in the city. Over the centuries, it has remained active, linking Konya's spiritual life and the broader Ottoman religious structure. Who knows, maybe when I come back, if I come back, it'll be open so I can go explore the inside. The nearby industrial school was more of the same, closed for renovations, but that doesn't take away from how important it was in the city's development. Industrial schools were an important part of the Tanzimat reforms during the 1800s Ottoman Empire, and these schools originally started in Istanbul and eventually spread throughout the country.
They must have like renovation season here because like everything's under renovation at once. Mosques, old homes, city walls, minarets, everything all at once is under renovation, which is great, but from a travel perspective, not so much. Womp womp, including the museum I wanted to go to about the Seljuk emperors. It's funny though, rather than put up a sign on the front, they've got a guy sitting at the front desk whose job it is to tell people the museum's closed. Walked in, he said it in Turkish, so I know what it means. The museum's closed. Okay. So, hey, at least he's pulling a paycheck, right?
That dialing sound meant that it was time for the call to prayer, so I settled in for some afternoon tea while the religious population visited their mosques. Confident that the prayers had ended after about 30 minutes, I headed over to see the city's culture park and a large mosque that just called to me. The culture park was a hub of activity, playing host to this rose garden, a library, even an open pond filled with geese. It was also near one of the university centers, so students could be found at the cafes, on park benches, and in the grass, studying and hanging out with their friends. On the north side of the culture park was a large Hasebe-Zade Cami, built in the early 20th century during the late Ottoman period. It was commissioned by Hasebe-Zade Effendi, a prominent local religious scholar, to serve as a major congregational mosque in Konya as the city expanded beyond its historic core. The mosque became a focal point for communal prayer, Friday sermons, and religious education as the city expanded, reflecting both the social and spiritual needs of the growing population. Unlike earlier Seljuk mosques, this one was designed with a single, large prayer hall under a central dome, accommodating hundreds of worshippers at once. Its placement near the park also emphasized accessibility, drawing people from the surrounding neighborhoods and university while remaining visible from the main thoroughfares. Over the decades, it hosted important community events, teaching sessions, and gatherings during Ramadan and other religious observances. Even today, the mosque continues to operate as a center for worship and study. Its long-standing role in Konya's religious life shows how Ottoman-era mosque construction adapted to urban growth, providing space for both devotion and the education of the city's growing Muslim population while maintaining continuity with the broader traditions of Islamic practice in Anatolia. I arrived just as Friday prayers were concluding, and people from all walks of life could be seen exiting the mosque, from chefs at nearby restaurants to police officers. I wouldn't say there were hundreds of people there, but there were certainly dozens, which reflected just how important this mosque was in the local area. Oh look, another museum that's under renovation. Go figure. Lucky me.
So as I walk through the streets, I've mentioned in other videos, I think, might have mentioned at the beginning of this one, that I crossed the line from, where the kind of Seljuk stronghold was over to the Byzantine side. But as you walk through the streets, you don't really see that. You don't really see the Byzantine side. You don't really see a whole lot of Seljuk or Ottoman either. And the question is why. And I've been thinking about that. It's been bothering me. Like, man, all I'm doing is seeing like mosques and markets, mosques and markets. But the reason is that's history, and it's not the current empire's history. And it made me think of Spain. You don't have homages to the Cordoban Emirate on the Iberian Peninsula in Spain. You don't have grand mosques, you don't have statues, and you have traces of it in architecture. It's really about it. And it's not racist or hateful or anything, it's just that's not the empire. And even though Turkey is Muslim majority, even though the Ottoman Caliphate was the fourth, the Seljuk was teamed up with the Abbasids, which were the third. It's a secular nation now. Ottoman Empire is gone, where Turkey is. So don't even speak the same language. Ottoman, Turkish, and modern Turkish are completely different. Ataturk changed it. So it's just a reminder to me as I'm sitting here. I was kind of getting down, like, man, I feel all I'm doing is recording mosques and seeing mosques. But one, the point is to explore Islam, but two, that's part about learning about history is time moves on. If you're not the victor, you're left to the past.
Of course, in a city as important as Konya, I had to visit the local statue of Ataturk, the first leader of the Republic of Turkey. This statue is located at the main traffic circle that leads down the road to the train station, welcoming all visitors into the city.
So I was going to this madrasa, which is closed, incidentally, for renovation restoration. You can hear it in the background, go figure. And I just happened to look and go, is that a church? That's what you got right here. Built in 1910, closed now. Talk about ill-fated. I gotta say, it's pretty cool to be just walking down the street and be able to walk beside like an actual ongoing archaeological dig. Like they're out there working right now. And this is clearly something decently new that they found. As you can see, they're still digging up the walls, but that's a pretty cool thing to see from a historian perspective, traveler's perspective, and someone who just enjoys that kind of stuff. So that's it for this episode of the Wayfarer Expedition. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single thing coming to you from the adventure across the world. Also, remember to go check out my social media, Instagram, Threads, and Snapchat at JRT Voyage, the Facebook page, Jack Rogers Author, and of course, JackRogersAuthor.com, so you don't miss a single blog, video, invitation to join me on this crazy adventure across the world. I'll see you guys on the road.